When you walk away peacefully, you're not quitting and you're not losing. You're making a decision rooted in self-respect, and that's exactly why it changes how she sees you. Most people think respect comes from convincing, explaining, or proving themselves, but real respect is felt when someone knows their value without needing to announce it. The moment you stop chasing validation, you stop giving your power away. Think about it. When emotions run high, the natural reaction is to fight harder, talk more, send longer messages, or try to fix everything immediately. That reaction comes from fear of loss, fear of being misunderstood, fear of being replaced. But when you choose to step back calmly without drama, you're sending a clear signal that your identity isn't tied to this one outcome. And that's rare. Walking away peacefully shows that you value yourself enough to not tolerate confusion, disrespect, or emotional chaos. You're not punishing her. You're not trying to teach her a lesson. You're simply choosing dignity over desperation. And whether she admits it or not, that shift is impossible to ignore. Here's the truth most men don't realize: arguing for your worth lowers it. The more you try to explain why you deserve respect, the less powerful you appear. But when you quietly remove yourself from a situation that no longer aligns with your standards, your actions speak louder than any emotional speech ever could. Silence backed by self-respect creates presence. It creates impact. This is where many people get confused. They think walking away makes them look weak or indifferent. In reality, emotional restraint requires strength. Anyone can react, anyone can explode, anyone can beg, but it takes discipline to stay calm when you're emotionally invested. That discipline communicates maturity, confidence, and inner stability, and those traits naturally command respect. When you don't chase, something interesting happens. She begins to reflect, not because you forced her to, but because your absence removes the noise. Suddenly, she's no longer reacting to your messages or emotions. She's reacting to the space you left behind, and in that space, she starts to feel the difference between a man who needed her approval and a man who simply chose peace. Self-respect is felt before it's understood. She may not consciously say he walked away because he respects himself, but she will feel it. She'll sense that you didn't abandon yourself to keep her. And deep down, people respect those who refuse to betray themselves just to be accepted. This is why peaceful walking away doesn't close closed doors. It reframes you. You're no longer the man trying to hold on. You become the man who knows when to let go without bitterness. That calm confidence lingers. It stays with her long after the moment passes, because it contrasts sharply with the emotional chaos most people bring into relationships. And here's the most important part: even if she never comes back, you win because you didn't lose your self-respect trying to save something that required you to shrink. Respect starts with how you treat yourself, and when you walk away peacefully, you set a standard not just for her but for yourself. That's where real strength begins. One of the fastest ways respect disappears is when emotional control disappears. Most people don't realize this, but how you handle pressure tells others everything they need to know about you. When emotions rise and you still remain grounded, you instantly separate yourself from the majority, and that separation from respect is born. In moments of tension, disappointment, or uncertainty, many men react instead of respond. They raise their voice, demand answers, send paragraphs trying to be understood, or let frustration spill into blame, not because they're bad people, but because they're overwhelmed. The problem is emotional outbursts don't communicate strength, they communicate instability, and instability never earns respect. When you walk away peacefully, you demonstrate something rare: emotional self-mastery. You show that your emotions don't control you, you control them. That doesn't mean you don't feel deeply, it means you don't let feelings dictate your behavior, and that distinction matters more than most people realize. Emotional control creates a sense of safety. Women may not always articulate it, but they instinctively respect men who can stay calm when things aren't perfect. Calmness signals reliability, it signals maturity, it signals that you're not easily shaken by external circumstance. In a world full of reactive behavior, composure stands out. Think about it this way: anyone can be calm when everything is going well. The real test is how someone behaves when they don't get what they want. Walking away peacefully during emotional conflict shows that you don't need to win, dominate, or prove a point to feel secure. That quiet confidence is powerful. When you don't argue, chase, or explode, you remove emotional fuel from the situation. There's nothing for resistance to push against, no drama to feed on, no chaos to escalate. And that absence of reaction forces a deeper response. She's no longer responding to your emotions, she's responding to your character. This is where respect begins to grow, not because you demanded it, but because you embodied it. Emotional control tells her that you can handle discomfort without losing yourself, that you can accept uncertainty without panic, that you don't need to overpower emotions to feel masculine. You contain them. Another important truth is this: emotional reactions often come from fear of loss. When you stay calm and walk away, you're silently communicating that you trust yourself enough to handle any outcome. You're not afraid of silence, you're not afraid of distance, you're not afraid of letting things unfold. And fearlessness, especially emotional fearlessness, is deeply respected. Your calm exit also changes how she remembers you. People don't remember every word you say, but they remember how you made them feel. And a man who leaves without hostility leaves behind an impression of strength, not bitterness. That impression lasts far longer than any argument ever could. This doesn't mean suppressing emotions or pretending not to care. It means choosing self control over self sabotage. It means understanding that not every moment requires a reaction. Sometimes the most powerful response is restraint. When you walk away peacefully, you show that your identity isn't fragile. You don't need validation in the heat of the moment. You don't need to be right to feel secure. You don't need emotional chaos to feel alive. And that level of inner stability naturally commands respect. Because at the end of the day, emotional control isn't about silence, it's about strength. And strength when shown calmly is impossible to ignore. Most people believe respect is built through communication, talking things out, explaining intentions, clearing misunderstandings, and sometimes that's true. But there are moments when words stop working. When emotions are charged, explanations don't bring clarity, they create noise. And noise blocks reflection. This is where walking away peacefully becomes powerful, not because you disappear to punish, but because your absence creates space. Space does what arguments never can, it forces introspection. When you're present and emotionally engaged, her mind is busy reacting, responding to your tone, interpreting your words, defending her position. But when you remove yourself calmly, that reactive cycle breaks. Suddenly, there's nothing to push against, no message to reply to, no energy to resist, just silence. Silence is uncomfortable. In that silence, the mind starts filling in the gaps. She begins replaying moments, conversations, and behaviors, not because you asked her to, but because your absence shifted the dynamic. You didn't chase, you didn't justify, you didn't plead your case, and that restraint gives your actions weight. Words can be dismissed, emotions can be blamed on the moment, but a calm withdrawal feels intentional. It signals that you saw something clearly and made a decision. That realization alone triggers reflection because it forces the question most people avoid: what made him step back? When you stay and argue, you remain predictable. When you leave calmly, you become uncertain in a powerful way, not chaotic but composed. That uncertainty invites curiosity, and curiosity is the doorway to respect. Another important detail here is timing. Walking away peacefully stops the emotional spiral before it turns destructive. Instead of creating memories of shouting, accusations, or desperation, you leave behind a clean emotional slate. When she thinks of you, she doesn't remember chaos, she remembers control. That difference changes everything. Reflection requires stillness, and stillness only comes when the emotional storm ends. By walking away, you end the storm without making her the enemy. You don't force conclusions, you allow them. And conclusions reached internally are always more powerful than ones forced externally. This is why silence often hits harder than words. Not because it's manipulative, but because it removes distraction. She can no longer focus on defending herself against you. She starts observing the situation instead of reacting to it. And observation leads to understanding. Your absence also highlights your value in a subtle way. Not through scarcity tactics, but through contrast. She notices what's missing: your presence, your energy, your calm. And only when something is absent do people measure its impact. That realization deepens respect because it reframes who you were in her life. This doesn't mean every silence leads to reconciliation, and it shouldn't. The goal isn't control, it's clarity. Walking away peacefully gives both people a chance to see the situation without emotional distortion. Sometimes that leads her back with a new level of respect. Sometimes it leads you forward with peace. Either way, you gain. What matters is that you didn't try to force understanding. You trusted space to do what arguments couldn't. You trusted your value enough to let silence speak. And silence, when backed by self-respect, carries authority. When she reflects, she's not just thinking about what happened, she's thinking about who you are, a man who didn't need to convince, a man who didn't collapse under emotion, a man who knew when to step back. And that image lingers, because absence doesn't weaken presence, it defines it. One of the most powerful things you communicate when you walk away peacefully is that you don't need validation or closure to move forward. And that independence shifts how you're seen at a fundamental level. Most people stay stuck not because they care, because they need reassurance, they need answers. They need the other person to confirm that their feelings were valid. When you don't need that, it changes everything. Chasing closure often looks like maturity, but underneath it's usually attachment. It's the need to feel settled before letting go. The problem is, closure given by someone else is never real, it's temporary relief. And the more you seek it, the more dependent you appear on their response. Dependence quietly erodes respect. When you walk away without demanding explanations, you're showing emotional self-sufficiency. You're saying, without words, I trust myself enough to move on without your permission. That's not cold, it's confident. And confidence that isn't loud feels even stronger. This is where abundance shows up. Not abundance in options, but abundance in self. You're not acting as if this connection is the only thing giving your life meaning. You have direction, you have purpose. You have stability beyond this moment. And people instinctively respect those who aren't emotionally stranded. Think about how rare that is. Most people cling because letting go feels like losing identity. Walking away peacefully communicates that your identity is intact with or without her. That emotional independence creates gravity. It makes her reconsider who had the real power, not in control, but in self possession. When you don't seek validation, you also remove pressure, pressure to respond, pressure to reassure, pressure to explain. Without that pressure, resistance drops. She no longer feels like she has to defend her position or protect her space. And ironically, that lack of pressure often makes people lean in mentally. Your calm detachment also reframes the ending. Instead of being remembered as someone who needed answers, you're remembered as someone who accepted reality without collapsing. That memory carries weight. It suggests maturity, emotional depth, and inner strength. Another important shift happens internally. When you stop chasing closure, you stop outsourcing your peace, you reclaim emotional authority over your life. That inner shift changes how you move, speak, and show up everywhere else. And that change is felt even from a distance. This is why walking away peacefully isn't about strategy, it's about alignment. You're aligning your behavior with your values instead of your fears. You're choosing dignity over reassurance, growth over comfort, stability over emotional dependency. And whether she consciously recognizes it or not, that alignment is attractive. Respect grows when someone sees that you didn't crumble when things became uncertain, that you didn't negotiate your worth for clarity, that you didn't beg to be understood. Even if she never reaches out, your peaceful exit becomes the standard by which she measures future interactions. She compares how others react emotionally to how you handled yourself, and that contrast elevates your image. Because a man who can walk away without bitterness, without demands, without chasing explanations is a man who trusts himself, and self-trust is one of the strongest foundations respect can be built on. You didn't need closure. You created peace. When you walk away peacefully, something unexpected happens. Instead of creating distance emotionally, you often create curiosity, not because you try to be mysterious, but because you didn't behave the way most people do. Human psychology is wired to notice contrast, and calm detachment creates one of the strongest contrasts there is. Most exits are loud, emotional, dramatic. They come with explanations, accusations, long messages, or final speeches. Those exits create resistance because they feel heavy, they feel loaded, and once resistance appears, respect disappears. Your calm exit does the opposite. It feels light, unforced, almost unfinished, and that unsettled feeling lingers, not in a painful way, but in a questioning way. She's not replaying your anger, she's replaying your restraint. Pressure pushes people away. Detachment removes pressure. When you don't demand attention, reassurance, or resolution, there's nothing to fight against, no emotional weight to escape from. And that absence of pressure allows curiosity to grow naturally. She starts wondering what you're thinking, how you're feeling, why you didn't react the way she expected, and curiosity is far more powerful than confrontation just because it pulls instead of pushes. This is where respect deepens quietly, not through manipulation, but through maturity. Your calm behavior suggests emotional depth. It signals that you don't need chaos to feel significant, that you don't equate intensity with importance, and that kind of emotional restraint feels rare. Calm detachment also communicates boundaries without hostility. You didn't threaten to leave, you didn't announce ultimatums. You simply step back when something no longer aligned. That shows clarity, and clarity is respected. Another key point here is that detachment doesn't mean indifference, it means self control. You cared, but you didn't let caring turn into self-abandonment. That balance is difficult, and difficulty often earns respect. When you don't chase, you remove predictability. Predictability kills intrigue. She expected you to explain, to push, to fight for reassurance. Instead, you chose composure. That breaks patterns, and broken patterns force reevaluation. Your calm exit also leaves emotional space for imagination. Instead of remembering an argument, she imagines your absence, your life moving forward, your energy redirected, and imagination often carries more emotional weight than reality. This is why emotional pull isn't created by intensity, it's created by mystery grounded in confidence, and confidence without noise feels magnetic, not aggressive, not performative, just solid. Even if she never reaches out, the curiosity remains. You become the standard for how calm strength looks, the man who didn't need to convince, the man who didn't linger to be chosen, and if she does reflect deeply, she realizes something important. You didn't walk away to gain power over her, you walked away because you already had power over yourself. That realization shifts respect permanently, because the man who can leave without resentment, without pressure, and without emotional collapse is a man who operates from abundance. And abundance, when felt emotionally, always creates pull. You didn't chase curiosity, you became it. When you walk away peacefully, you're not making a statement in the moment, you're setting a standard that echoes long after you're gone. Most people announce their boundaries with emotion. They argue, they warn, they threaten. But the strongest boundaries are the ones that don't need explanation, they're enforced through action. By choosing to leave without drama, you're showing how you expect to be treated. Not through demands, but through self respect. You're saying, this is the level of clarity, respect, and emotional maturity I operate at. And once that standard is set, it can't be unseen. Even if she doesn't fully understand it right away, she feels it, because standards change memory. She doesn't remember you as the man who begged to stay or fought to be right. She remembers you as the man who knew when to step back without losing himself. That image becomes part of your legacy in her mind. This is where respect becomes permanent. Temporary attraction can fade, emotions can cool, but the way someone carries themselves at the end of a connection leaves a lasting imprint. Your peaceful exit rewrites the story of who you were in her life. You didn't collapse under pressure. You didn't sacrifice dignity for comfort. You didn't stay where you had to explain your worth, and those choices elevate you even in absence. Standards don't just affect how others see you, they shape how you see yourself. Walking away peacefully reinforces your own identity. You become someone who honors boundaries, someone who doesn't negotiate self-respect, someone who trusts action more than words. That internal alignment changes everything that comes after. Future interactions, whether with her or anyone else, are influenced by this moment. Because once you've walked away with dignity, you can't unknow it. You move differently, you speak differently, you tolerate less confusion, and that growth compounds. Another important truth is this: respect doesn't require reconciliation. Sometimes the greatest impact you have on someone is the example you set by leaving well. Not everyone is meant to stay, but everyone can learn from how you exit. When she looks back, she may not remember every detail of what went wrong, but she will remember how you handled yourself: calm, controlled, clear, and those traits stand out in a world full of emotional chaos. Walking away peacefully also protects your peace. You don't carry resentment, you don't replay arguments, you don't question whether you lost yourself trying to hold on, you leave clean. And that clarity gives you momentum. This is why true strength isn't loud, it doesn't announce itself, it doesn't need applause, it simply moves forward without bitterness. And whether she respects you immediately or realizes it much later, the result is the same. You didn't compromise who you are to be chosen. You chose yourself. That's not ego. That's integrity, and integrity, once demonstrated, is never forgotten.